Good Shabbos, good Shabbos. Such a joy to be together. I'm going to begin the Torah service today with a few words of Torah, and then we'll read from the Torah and see what it has to tell us today. This week, Thank you. This week we continue with the story of the Israelites enslaved in Mitzrayim, a narrow place. The continuation of the plagues that transpire as a result of the Pharaoh's inability to see the reality of the situation. Even his advisors, who have been diligently devoted, have finally broken ranks and said to him, "How long shall this one be a snare to us? Haterem teda ki avda Mitzrayim. Are you not aware that Egypt is lost?" But Pharaoh's heart is hardened, whether by his own accord or by the hand of the divine, and he is not yet willing to let go of his position of power and control. The 8th and 9th plagues of locust and darkness ensue, and then the final plague, the slaying of the firstborn males. On a side note, the Torah has always had a problem with the convention of the firstborn males. If you look closely at every family structure in the book of Genesis, the firstborn is never the one who ends up with the blessing. From Cain to Manasseh, they are always usurped by their younger siblings. Perhaps this is the Torah's way of cheering on the underdog. On the eve of the last plague, there is a distinct change in the narrative. God is speaking to Moses and the Israelites with a sudden urgency and giving instructions for a detailed ritual that will usher in their imminent liberation. You shall sacrifice an unblemished lamb, one per family. And if the lamb is too much for one family, then you should join together with another family, so no meat is wasted. You should eat this sacrifice in haste with your sandals on and staff in hand, ready to depart. You should put the blood of this lamb on the doorpost of your homes, which will be a sign that this is an Israelite home. This ritual is to be done for all generations that follow, for all time. And when your children ask, "Why are you doing this?" you can tell them that it is the Passover sacrifice that Yud-He-Vav-He commanded, who passed over our homes during the plague of the Egyptians. These are the words on parchment, thousands of years old, but we are asked at our Seder every year, and when we read them in the Torah, to feel as if we ourselves are slaves in Egypt, as if we are waiting to be liberated. I'll never forget 4 years ago, April of 2020, when we were all trembling in our homes on the eve of Passover, when we knew there was a plague sweeping over the land. And we sat in our homes praying that it would spare us and our families. And suddenly these words had a deeper resonance. That time feels like a distant dream. And I don't miss much about COVID. But I do miss the way in which it stopped us, stopped the world in its tracks. It was a global awakening, something that reminded us that we are not all powerful. Human beings, we are amazingly clever and creative, and we need reminders that we are not God. We need reminders that we are connected and fragile creatures navigating the same world of love and fear. It's amazing how a plague can unite us all and remind us of our fragility and even get us to stop killing each other for a few weeks. Perhaps plagues like this are not all bad. This past week when it snowed, the first thought that crossed my mind was, thank God, now we can slow down. The second thought was, I wish this would happen in Israel-Palestine. I wish there was so much snow that it became impossible for this war to continue. I wish there was enough snow that we had to help each other and figure out how we were going to survive. Without a common calamity, we're left to our own devices. And we see where that has gotten us. We are broken as a community, as a Jewish people. And it seems that this brokenness has spread to every corner of our globe. It's often said that Israel and Jerusalem are the heart of the world. That never felt more true than right now. The brokenness that is felt there is radiating out to every heart. We're all in a terrible, reactive state to a deeply broken landscape. And I'm convinced that we're asking the wrong question. The question we've been asking is, whose fault is this? Believe me, I've heard it all. We've heard it all. And it's all true. We're all at fault. So what question could we be asking? It's not just a rhetorical question. I want to ask you to think and maybe even discuss at some point, what's the question we could be asking right now? In a New York Times article by Rabbi Sharon Brous, she shares the following insight. One of the great casualties of tribalism is curiosity. And when we are no longer curious, when we don't try to imagine or understand what another person is thinking or feeling, or where her pain comes from, our hearts begin to narrow. I would say our hearts begin to harden. We become less compassionate and more entrenched in our own worldviews. She goes on to say we desperately need a spiritual rewiring in our time. Imagine a society in which we learn to see one another in our pain, to ask one another, what happened to you? Imagine that we hear one another's stories and say amen to another's pain and even pray for one another's healing. She calls this the amen effect. Sincere, tender encounters that help us forge new spiritual and neural pathways by reminding us that our lives and our destinies are entwined. Because ultimately it is only by finding our way to one another that we will begin to heal. My blessing for us is, may we all be curious and try for a moment to step outside of our own worldview, and may the plague of our own certainty give way to compassion and care for those around us. Say together, amen.